This 2008 TrailBlazer went for scrap after blowing a transmission line and on the highway, and all the transmission fluid came out, and the transmission, I don't know if it's any good or not. If you put a little bit of fluid in it, it seems to drive, but it leaks out. So I've got a drain pan under it right now. I'm gonna see if I can't repair the line and see if the transmission's any good or not. I think it might be a fixer. Just in behind the power steering pump, the transmission lines are rusty and leaking. The radiator gets hot, but transmissions don't like getting hot. So why they circulate it through the hot radiator, I don't know why they do that, but the automatic lines come from the transmission up to the radiator, and then they just return back. So there's a rusty spot in between down below, and I might do an external cooler, or for now I just might loop it because it's a loop and return system. So I might just cut the rusty chunk out and loop it back, fill it up with fluid, and see if the transmission works okay, if it hasn't been burnt out. Alright. There's the transmission bell housing, and those lines go up behind the motor, and they're rusty up there, somewhere way up there. Somewhere up there they're rusty and leaking. There's a little rusty spot right here too. So what I might do is I might just cut them here, and all those rusty lines from here up, and just delete those or bypass those. Seems like it's rusty here, so I should probably get rid of that. I'm gonna see if I can cut them off here and either loop them for a test, just to test the transmission. Either that, or cut them and put rubber hose on here and run the rubber hose to a separate external cooler. This here is a chunk of rusty chunk of transmission line, and I know my gloves are dirty, but it's been cut off on the end. I cut it, and yeah, that's just an example of what size I'm gonna need and how I'm gonna do it. So this is a tube cutter, a small one, super compact, really small tube cutter. It has a cutting wheel here and two small wheels on the opposite side, and you put your tube in there and you tighten it down on that cutting wheel, very similar to the homemade wire stripper. Anyway, so you put your tube in the tube cutter and you just spin it on that cutting wheel. You spin it around there a couple times, and I'm just gonna keep turning it until it gets easy to turn, or until it gets loose. And once it gets easy to turn, you just tighten it up. You just tighten the tool up a little bit. So there's a wheel here for tightening, so I'll just tighten it a little bit. You don't want it to be difficult. The tighter you go, the harder it is to turn, but the tighter you go, the better it'll cut. So when I cut it off, it looked like this, sharp and closed, pinched off, jagged. but when I use the tube cutter, it comes out like this, nice and round and straight. So the idea is to cut them off like that under the vehicle at the transmission or wherever the lines are solid, and then I'll take some rubber hose designed for oils and fluids like this, and I'll put the rubber hose over this. Sometimes you need to flare them. I don't know if I'll need to flare it or not. If I use the high pressure clamps, it might be okay. I don't think it's a high pressure return, but if I use the high pressure clamps, I might not need to flare it. I cut the rusty chunk of the lines out and did a return loop, so it should hold fluid now and hopefully not leak. I put 2 liters in, or I put about 3 liters in, I guess, and it doesn't seem to be leaking. So I'm going to run it and check the fluid level while it's running, and this might be like a moment of truth where I can see if the transmission, now that it can hold fluid, I can see if the transmission's any good or not. Hopefully. So if the transmission's any good, it might be worth fixing. It's pretty decent vehicle. I wouldn't give up on it over a leaky transmission line or rusty transmission line. So there's a good chance the transmission might not be any good, and that might be why they gave up on it. Looks like there's a traction control light and a low tire indicator. So this vehicle probably has tire pressure sensor monitors. Oil pressure is good. It runs nice and quiet. It's charging. No check engine light or anything like that. It's only got 195 kilometers. So that's not too bad for a 2008, for a 10-year-old vehicle. This is the 4-wheel drive model. So it has 2-wheel high, 4-wheel low, all the good stuff. Push the gas pedal and she really goes. That's a good sign. That means it's probably not slipping in first gear. I can't take it on the highway to test all the gears right now, but I can take it down the driveway and see how many gears. There's second gear. Second gear is working. Oh, there's a bunny rabbit. So far, so good. The traction control light actually went out. It was on earlier, but it turned itself off just now. The 4-wheel drive seems to work okay. Well, the transmission seems to work okay in the first, second, and reverse. I'll have to get it out on the road and see if third gear works and make sure the transmission's not slipping on the final gear. It might have ran out of fluid in the final gear. It might have burnt out. I don't know. But she moved under her own power today. Cold start. Super cold out. It's like 5 below zero or something today. It's Christmas today. Merry Christmas. Oh yeah. Merry Christmas, Buster. Oh my goodness. You ever have one of those days? That's today. Well, I got this repair line and some clamps. This is a 3/8 fuel line, but they say it's oil compatible, and that's the same size as the transmission line. I thought I tried 3/8 and I thought it was a little bit big, but I know for sure the 5/16 is really tight, so I'm gonna give this a try. I got 2 clamps on each end this time, and 5 liters of automatic transmission fluid. So I'm gonna go underneath and put that on. Man, there's hardly any room to work underneath of these friggin' things. This thing definitely needs a lift kit. Okay, so this one is labeled 3/8. Well, I wouldn't, I'm a little cautious because it's still dripping out of there. And I'm trying not to get it all over myself. I got a drain pan underneath, so it's landing in the drain pan. But there's hardly any room to get my arms up in there, especially my left. Come on, baby. I wonder what size the one is I took off. I think it was 5/16. Oh, this fits. Oh, this is way better. This fits like perfect. This looks like it's almost done draining or dripping. But I want to get this one on further than the last time. And I got 2 clamps this time. Now I just need to put this one on. And I think we're in business. Oh, is it ever tricky to get my arms up in there? They're not easy to get at because the exhaust is over here. Make sure the clamps are good and tight. These are the nut and bolt, like the high pressure type clamps. Now I'll have to put a zip tie on this line, make sure it's not hanging down anywhere. Make sure it's not too close to the exhaust or anything. That's the transmission fluid dipstick right there. So it's way in the back and down low. So I've got this extension thing in here, and it reaches down in there, nice and small to fit in the dipstick tube. Now I gotta put the funnel in there and make sure there's no dirt or anything in there, and give her a gurgle. Well, I put 3 liters in there, and nowhere near 3 liters came out when I changed the line. So I'm pretty sure it was low. It was low on fluid from all this, from the leaky lines. So put 3 liters in for now. I still got 2 liters left here. It's a 5-liter jug. So I'm going to start it up. The engine needs to be running, or the transmission needs to be pumping to check the fluids on the automatics. So I'm going to fire it up and then see if I can get a reading on the dipstick. Well, it seems to be holding fluid, and I've got her topped up to the proper level on the dipstick. So maybe I can take it for a test drive and see if the transmission works again. Well, let's go for a friggin' test drive. See if this transmission works. It works, but I want to give it like a good test on get it up to speed and get it in third gear and stuff. The four-wheel drive works really good. When you're switching ranges from high range to low range, you want to put it in neutral, and the indicator light and the motor will go if it's in neutral. I think for high range, I don't think it matters high range. If you're going 4 high, 2 high, back and forth, I think you can shift on the fly. This one here has automatic mode. So 4 low works, 4 high works. I'm in 4 high right now. You're gonna switch on the fly, switch to 2-wheel drive on the fly. I found a button, there it goes, it's in 2-wheel drive. I found a button on the shifter here to turn off the traction control. So that's pretty handy. Man, she rides a little bit rough for considering it's got coil springs all around and it rides low like a car. I don't like how low the front end rides in this thing. Alright, I think we just went into third gear, around 55k. Okay, we're in overdrive now. 1500 RPMs, 95k, or 85k, 1500 RPMs. I'll step on the gas a little bit. Passing gear works. Everything's working. This is good. This is really good. A little bit of noise, but for a fixer-upper, what do you expect? Put a wheel bearing in it. I think it needs brakes, and it's gonna need attention. Actually, it needs wheels and tires all around because these wheels and tires have to go back to the previous owner. So it's gonna need some attention and some work and some parts, but I think it's worth fixing up. If the transmission is gonna be okay, I think it's worth fixing up. Try cruise control and see how the transmission acts with cruise control. Well, she works really good in the snow. It rides like a truck, it sits like a car. Front end's a little bit low, but I think we can work with that. So I'll have to get a set of wheels and tires for it and put a transmission cooler on it sometime between now and summer. I think in the cold weather, circulation loop is fine, I think, but I just wanted to test out the transmission, and it seems good and seems to work good. 4-wheel drive works good. It's gonna need a little bit of attention and a couple parts, but I don't think it's destined for the junkyard just yet.